Hi all, I'm Mike Trubetskov from EOL Studios, and today we'll be discussing the difference between producing and mixing a heavy track. What is the difference between producing and mixing? Well, it's pretty clear what mixing is for most of you, but producing is a bit of a different story. Most of the time, producing is associated with a person responsible for the whole process, for the whole sonic vision of an album, but there is no specific definition. So, I would like to start off by discussing what the role of a producer is in a modern scenario of heavy music production, most of the time executed from home studios as opposed to large facilities which people were primarily working on 20 or 30 years back. And then I would like to discuss the fine difference between producing and mixing on the later stage of the production process, where these two are more directly comparable. A producer is a person who would be responsible for overall sonic vision for the project, a cohesive sonic picture and the feel for the entire record, a pre-production, arrangement and tweaks associated with particular lines in the production, particular song moves, hooks, and their relationship to the message that the artist is after. A producer would also be responsible for overseeing the performance of the musicians in the studio and making sure that their delivery works in the context of the material, in the context of their message, and simply is great. A producer then works with the sounds, selects and assigns particular sonic characters, feels, vibes, and certain atmosphere to make that work in relation to the message of the track and overall feel of the record. For instance, a producer would be the one responsible for the selection of guitar amplifier and choosing a specific amp-cab match in order to make the record as heavy as it is supposed to be guitar sound-wise. Or maybe the producer would be a person selecting a different snare drum so that it punches more in the context of the record. Or maybe a bass tone amp, or maybe a vocal microphone has to be used in a different way in order to achieve a more, say, mid-forward character. A producer would be the person responsible for either making edits or outsourcing this, and making sure that any obstacles which have arisen during the recording process have been addressed. For instance, specific guitar may have not been recorded particularly tightly, and that was only apparent on the recording day. Or maybe the synthesizer sound was not optimal on the day. Maybe the problem with the instrument itself has arisen, or maybe the stems that were delivered from overseas were not of amazing quality. Such things routinely arise on any production, almost in any case, 80 or 90% of cases. And the role of a producer would be to decide how can one work around these issues and make them work in the context of the track, and moreover, not only to make them not noticeable, but actually make them a feature and a character of the track. Finally, the role of the producer in the modern production process would be to put together all the characters and all the sonic visions, all the feels and vibes for the track on a mixing stage, either by sourcing it to someone else, a professional in the field, a mixing engineer, or by executing it themselves, and make sure that all the characters dialed in on the previous stages work and form the cohesive, full, heavy picture of the record. Finally, after executing all the recording and editing stages, and when the final multi-track is actually available for mixing, that's where producing and mixing is directly comparable in the context of heavy music production. And I'm going to share a story with you which happened quite recently last year when I was producing an album for a local band, and they, my clients, have made a specific request for me to execute on the mixing stage. They said, I just want all the instruments to be clearly audible and present in the mix. And that's when something clicked in my head, and I truly realized the difference between producing and mixing a record on that final stage. This is slightly subjective, but now I consider mixing mostly technical sort of process. Indeed, making sure that all the instruments are clearly audible and present in the mix, which is on its own a major challenge for metal productions, as mixes are so dense it's hard to cut through the wall of guitars with your kicks and with the snares and make sure that the bass stands out and vocals are there. It's a challenge, and that's why mixing, in my opinion, is a more of a technical sort of side, technical definition to make things present and audible. Whereas, on the other hand, production is a process in which one dials in specific feels, specific characters, specific tones in order to complement the technical side of things in mixing and make sure that the audible and present instruments actually have the pleasing and nice character that is enjoyable to the listener and delivers the message for the record. Therefore, there is a major difference between a band sending a multitrack to a mixing engineer for mixing, or a band sending a multitrack, maybe even the same multitrack, for an engineer to get produced and mixed. So what would be the difference in this scenario? Well, the band may supply MIDI for drum lines in order for the engineer to come up with specific drum tones and characters and produce the tones that are suitable for the record. The band may also supply guitar and bass DI so that the engineer or producer reamps them and dials in different characters that also make the record thicker, heavier, and complement to their vision. The band may request specific effects or support elements such as synthesizers or keys to enhance and make the record more vibrant. Or the band may ask for some certain advice on adding backing vocals into the specific part of the track, or maybe enhancing the main vocal line, or choosing a different performance for that. Even though this should have been executed slightly earlier in the production stages, it is still possible to achieve this on the final production and mixing stage. To sum up, the difference between producing and mixing on the later stages of the heavy production process is that production is achieving vibe, feel and character for your sounds, and mixing makes them technically present, audible and clear in the final record. Guys and gals, thank you for watching. I hope this helps to clarify the difference between this process, and when you work on your next record, you will understand what part of the process you are at the moment and how to execute it better. If you have any questions or suggestions, please never hesitate to hit me up. I'm always here available to help. Many thanks for watching and cheers. Mike.